man from Connecticut claims to have spent more than 2 decades locked in a small room, deprived of food and water, under the control of his stepmother. His only way to escape was to set fire to his own room, risking his life in the process. Now, his testimony has shaken an entire community and brought his stepmother to justice. How is it possible that no one discovered this for so long?
He was always upstairs on the second floor on the window, like there, like looking like a little ghost. Like he was pale, like white. And then I'm like, I don't know why maybe he doesn't like to come out. But I never thought anything was wrong.
I was just in the backyard playing, and I looked up and saw a boy, and I waved at him. He smiled and waved back, and I hadn't seen him in the house or anywhere around since. So I just figured, like, was family visiting? Is it somebody that I made up? There was just no sign of him being there outside of that day.
I've been out here I don't know how many times with the dogs, cutting grass. If he would have just tapped on the window and said, "Help me," I could have helped him.
Everything began when the man was 11 years old. By then, according to his testimony, his life changed completely. The place that should have been his family refuge turned into a room with no way out. His confinement, he says, did not last for days or months, but for decades. Imagine being 11 years old and feeling that the only world you can aspire to is reduced to 4 walls measuring just 8 by 9 feet. Although difficult to comprehend, he describes his space as an improvised cell. While outside, time continued to pass for everyone else. But that's not all. His daily routine was so precarious that it is shocking. Just a couple of glasses of water a day and tiny portions of food, insufficient to nourish a growing child. Over the years, this rationing forced the young boy to drink from the toilet to quench his thirst. His physical deterioration was inevitable. When he was found at 32 years old, he weighed only 68 pounds, a figure that reflects the extreme malnutrition he suffered. Imagine waking up every morning with no hope of leaving in conditions that did not even meet the most basic human needs. Still, his story does not end with hunger. At one point, the school where he studied raised suspicions. When the child was in 4th grade, some teachers and counselors began to question his physical and emotional condition. According to court documents, the institution contacted authorities. However, the process was abandoned, and the child was eventually pulled from school. No one heard much about him again. That warning sign, which could have changed his fate, was ignored, and the door to his room, according to his account, closed forever. But something even darker was brewing behind those walls. True liberation came in the most dangerous way, through a fire. Desperate to escape, the man says he resorted to an unthinkable method. Using hand sanitizer and paper, he started a fire inside his own room, hoping the smoke and flames would force someone to rescue him. It was an act as reckless as it was desperate, but it worked. Neighbors recall seeing an intense glow, an orange light covering the night, and called the fire department. And that's how, after 20 years, the bars of his captivity were finally broken. However, the story does not end with the smoke. His stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, was accused of being directly responsible for his confinement and for depriving him of food and water. According to the defense, everything has been a misunderstanding.
Absolutely not true. He was not locked in a room. She did not restrain him in any way. She provided food. She provided shelter. She is blown away by these allegations.
She insists that the man was not locked up, that she never deprived him of food, and that his treatment was more a result of the discipline imposed by his father, who has since passed away. She describes him as someone who dictated how his son was to be raised, and portrays herself as a victim of an exaggerated narrative. However, the police present a different version.
He lit a fire with some hand sanitizer he recovered, some paper from a printer, and he lit that fire while he was locked in that room from the outside. He lit that fire knowing he could very well die, but he'd been locked in that room for 20 years, and for 20 years he'd been trying to get out of that room.
The man had been suffering for years and could barely survive under the conditions he endured. The opposing perspectives create a scenario as confusing as it is disturbing, but justice sought to uncover the truth. After the rescue, and given the magnitude of the case, the police did not hesitate to classify it as something straight out of a horror story. Authorities filed charges against the stepmother, set her bail at $300,000, and began investigating every corner of the house for evidence. The man, meanwhile, was treated for smoke inhalation and severe malnutrition. With little strength, but enough determination, he reportedly told the rescuers, "I just wanted my freedom." The phrase lingers in the minds of those who heard it, a reminder of what can happen behind closed doors in a seemingly normal home. However, this leaves a lingering question. This man's story invites reflection on the fragility of the system that is supposed to protect minors and vulnerable individuals. How many warning signs can we ignore before an irreversible tragedy occurs? Beyond the guilt that the courts will determine, this story highlights the urgency of staying vigilant, of not taking things for granted, and of understanding that sometimes a single call at the right time can mean the difference between freedom and captivity. How far are we willing to go to prevent something like this from happening in our surroundings? Sometimes the only way to prevent a disaster is to ask ourselves, what would we have done if we had seen the first signs?